Okay, continuing on with our cleanup. Let's put our NURBS curves back on there. And our biggest issue at the moment is what happens here at this contact, because the brick does some weird stuff right there. And we got to get to the bottom of why is it doing what it's doing. All right, so let's just focus in on this area here. I'm actually going to make my timeline a lot smaller just to focus in on that tiny frame range. Scaling things down best I can. So right in there, actually that's just frame 34 to frame 44 or so. That should be fine. I like to have a smaller timeline so it's easier for me to kind of look at frame by frame issues. All right, so one of the big things that happens here is that we do get our capsule, our orient control, to flip. That doesn't look like that's really responsible for the major issues that we see right here, I don't think. But we do have a big rotation weirdness happening with this body. Right? We go from being positioned here to being like that. And if I were to go backwards here, if I were to rotate this back out like this, I would get something that looks like that. I'm just looking at the graph over here while I do this. So what I want to make sure I understand is which edge am I looking at as it's rotating? That comes down. Yes. All right. So I think we just need a custom frame here. We're going from there to flat, right? So basically the same rotation edge. And what I'm going to do is just come in here and the pivot is currently located at there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to do a copy key on 39. So I'm just going to click on frame 39 with my middle mouse button, and I'm going to drag to frame 38. And what that does is it just duplicates the same position that was on frame 39, and it allows me to have that on frame 38 without having yet created a key. And I'm going to go in and go to my rotate control and rotate up like this here, something like that. And I'm going to select everything and press S. Now, bam. What I've done is I've basically created another key here that was more or less a copy of this frame with the rotation of this frame, but slightly changed. And that looks like that sits properly. We don't have any weird wonkiness happening anymore. Now let's go back and look at our full animation and see what we get. So I'm going to go from frame 1 to frame 60 again. I think that was the way to solve that major issue. There we go. And play again. Cool. All right, so that initial fall looks more or less okay, but fast. It's a little bit too fast. But the fall at the end feels really slow and soft. So these are just a little kind of mental notes I make to myself. Let me try to solve the slowness of this fall at the end. Let's just go in. That the vertical motion is attributed to our brick translate control. And that will most likely be due to an issue in Y, and here is what it is. I can see it already. When I was cleaning up those curves, I wasn't really paying attention to this, but here's the issue. The brick should be constantly gaining speed as it's going down, right? It is, gravity is affecting it. It's accelerating. It should not be going slowly. It should be picking up speed until it hits the ground. But right now, you can see it's actually quite linear, and it might even be slowing down just before it hits the ground. So if we go through here and look at all of the different controls from here to here, it should be accelerating. So I'm going to grab all of my controls there. I'm saying that first off, it's probably a little bit slow. So I want to say, let's take these two keys here and pull them back a couple frames. Right, so everything comes back a couple frames. And then I'm going to make this Oops, not going to move it. I'm going to come in here, and I've already broken that key, so I'm going to make it an acceleration like this, just like what we would do with the bouncing ball, for instance. Right, so that it's slower here and gradually gaining speed. And then, of course, this should just remain something like that. Okay, let's just see what that looks like now. Starting to look a bit better. Might still be a bit slow, but it's definitely looking better. See if there's anything else here that's kind of guilty of this same issue. Translate Z is probably okay. It's a little bit... I'll translate Z here. Okay, even though I'm moving it in X, it's actually changing it in Z here. All right, so that should be going forward at a fairly linear rate there is probably okay. Probably. Let's change it slightly there just to get a little variation. Slows down just a little bit. All right, what does that look like as it lands? Just, I'm checking in this window here. All right, I accidentally moved something so that that's kind of kicked back there now, so we don't want to move that. There we go. So I don't want to change these two, but I can change these ones. Cool. All right. What else? So the other issue that we had was that the brick falling probably just felt like it went down a little bit too fast. So let's just take that there at 37, and I'm going to grab everything, pull it down just 2 more frames. When in doubt, I will add an even number of frames, either like 2 frames or 4 frames or whatever, and then I will, if that still feels too fast, then I will add another 2 frames. The timing might feel a bit better now, but the spacing is starting to feel a bit off. So the spacing here is primarily being dictated by, again, the translate control, which, here we go, here's our main issue, is that that is really linear. That's like a straight line, and it should be more like a bouncing ball, where it's slower here and faster here, like we just did on the second jump. So start there, and then I would expect maybe that this one, I might not necessarily even need that keyframe there. I'm just going to delete it. The reason being is it's probably going to be easier to come in here now and grab this particular tangent handle and pull it out. Gotta be careful. I don't want to pull it out too far. You know what? I'm undoing, because if I notice what happens is I start pulling this out, the brick starts to raise up quite a bit higher, which I don't really want to have happen. So I'm undoing until I get back this guy here. This is going to be my new culprit. So this guy is going to help me do this. Still going to break that so I don't end up affecting the other side. Something like this. Cool. See what we get when we do that. There's a big jump there, and then it slows down, so we don't really want that. This is why we have to go in and very carefully examine what's happening. So right now, I'm going to have this, it's coming off the edge there. Might just get rid of that. I'm going back and saying, let's do the things I said we weren't going to do just a moment ago. The reason why, I just have to play around with it until I like it. That's the thing. Right? So we get this nice kind of shape, but ultimately, it feels like it's jumping up, which I don't like. Okay. how about this? Let's make that a little bit sort of flatter there and then gradually picking up speed. What does that look like? That might work. All right. So, struggling, pretty common. Figuring out how to do it. Okay, let's turn off those curves. Okay, cool. Starting to look better. And what I'm checking here is the spacing increasing gradually with each subsequent frame? Definitely right there it is. That's big. But these previous frames, they're fairly close together. Like the spacing is fairly similar. So I would like to address that as best I can. And that's part of the issue that I have here. So let's just say that halfway down, maybe around here, I still bring this back up a little bit, right? And now we have the opportunity to play around with our the frames that happen between here. So this guy can, oops, grab that, pull that back. Something like this, maybe. What does that feel like when I watch it? Turn off the curves. So that feels like it just slows down totally right there, which I don't like. It's like it picked up speed and then lost it immediately. So really, I can't let it do that. Let's break this guy. Maybe that'll be slightly linear there. Now, in the situation where you find that you're battling against the curves, what you can always do is go in and just pose each frame exactly where you want it to be. So ultimately, what I might do here is say, let's pull this one up a little bit. It might just be sitting down too low. All right, and it's going to compare. It's using my caret keys, comma and full stop keys on the keyboard, and just checking to see what we get. I'm only going to change the Y translation here. Pull that back. Oops. Like I said, frame by frame. So here's that frame, that frame. The next one might still be a little bit too low. Pull that back up there. And then we get down to this guy here. Pull that up a little bit. All right, actually, maybe pull that down a little bit. And then 35. Let's just see what we have here. Like that was between here and here, the spacing keeps getting bigger, which is good, but then it kind of stops getting bigger right here. So I'm going to pull this one back up a little bit. All right. 35 will nail in right about there. 36 looks good. 37 can start coming down a bit more. 38 can come down a bit more. Somehow lost my control here. So show nerves curves. Oops, somehow, that doesn't want to continue to play along. That's okay. Not sure why that's the case, but I can always insert a keyframe right here if I want to. Although technically I probably don't really need to. But if I wanted to, I could say keys, insert key tool, and just click on, will that let me? Do insert key? No, it doesn't seem to want to let me there. It's all right. I never really have to do that, so that's probably why I don't know how to do that. Let's grab this guy, pull that there, and what do we get? Okay. So now that I've gone in and adjusted that on every frame, I'm happier with the spacing overall. See what it looks like when I play it back and hope that I'm still happy with it. And this is sometimes what you need to do in animation, is go in and adjust things on every frame. Yeah, that looks better. Feels like it's picking up speed. So, just relying on the curves sometimes can be misleading, because the curves can be offset from what you would normally expect them to be doing, because you are dealing with other kinds of counter rotations or counter movements. So that's one thing that I would do to get started there. I'm actually going to change my renderer to viewport 2.0, and I'm going to go in and set my anti-aliasing to smooth wireframe and multi-sample anti-aliasing, and turn that on, so that everything looks a lot cleaner. Right? I don't have all those jaggy edges anymore. My graphics card is suitable to be able to play this back in real time. It shouldn't be a problem. All right. Now, that's looking a lot better than it was. There's still some issues to be cleaned up, and I'm just going to go ahead and save this scene as Spline 02. Cool. So what I'm just kind of focusing on the timing in that small section. Might still be a little bit fast. Let's just go back and look at everything we've done with that curve. Ultimately, we can start kind of seeing that there's a trend happening in that translate curve. We can definitely see that there's basically an overall shape that's happening there. Now, sometimes I would be tempted to go back in and just redraw the curve to match that. But I think just that'd probably be a little bit more advanced than I want to get to in this lesson. So for this, let that come down. And then I'm just going to say for now that the timing is okay. It's good enough for the sake of this example. But the timing at the end, let's just see, that might still need a little bit of work. Yeah. So that hits this, pops there, moves forward, and clonks down. I'm going to actually go in and grab that guy, and I'm going to rotate him forward a little bit more there on that frame. And then it starts to feel too slow through here. I think there's too many frames here. So is it just the rotation and the fall? Okay. So what I'm going to do is come in here, and I'll grab all my controls again, and let's just grab the ends, and let's pull these back by 2 frames. Like I said, I always do things in 2s, and what do we get then? Now it feels too fast. Okay, so pull those guys down just by 1. Let's try that. Feels a bit better. And grab this control again here. And I think I've decided I'm going to pull it back now a little bit. Just see what happens when I do that. Okay. That's looking better. I'm happier with that. All right, so what I am going to do is just kind of basically say that this is, for this kind of an assignment, this is good enough. What I would probably do if I wanted to add a little bit more pizzazz to it is that when this comes down here and plonks in, then there would still probably be a little bit of a jostling happening. It very well might fall over, right? There's lots of things that it could do. It's probably never going to really land up like this because it's the brick is quite tall and doesn't have a really large base, so it's probably going to fall over. But just in terms of learning some of the technicals of an assignment like this, this is probably good enough. So, we've taken a look through a variety of different issues in this assignment in terms of having a rig that requires obviously some thinking in order to be able to be used. It requires some scripts as well, which now have learned how to not only bring into Maya and activate, but also to add to our custom shelf and use as we need to. And you saw that we went back and forth quite a bit to make good use of those scripts to guide us through the positions for our rig, for example. We've also looked at how to start thinking about the graph editor, not just in terms of creating, big curves between keyframes that are, 12 frames apart, for instance, but to go in and actually frame by frame analyze the position of an object to make sure that we're actually getting the spacing that we want. And sometimes that means that we're actually animating on every frame. We're creating keyframes on every frame. And that's just the way that it is that we need to generate that motion convincingly. And I think that that's probably, the primary things that we've looked at. Now, like I said, there wasn't any video reference that I used for this. This is just kind of off the top of my head. Had I had any kind of reference to work from, some of my decisions might have been slightly different. But there is I have kind of an innate knowledge of what a brick does, what it looks like, how much it weighs and all that, and how it might react on different surfaces. So when I watch it back, I can tell, does that feel heavy enough? Does that not feel heavy enough? I could go in and I could do a lot more work on this. I mean, this is, like I said, it's really only good enough right now, but not great. And, to me, part of the biggest issue in this animation is like what happens right here. That could still use a lot of work. But like I said, also, we're not going to try to belabor this too much. So I hope this has been informative to you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next assignment.